video. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you so much for helping us out and for tapping into your creativity today. So as you know, we'll be painting this desert twilight image. And if you have the Creativity to Go kit, you have some important things. So now is a good time to kind of open up your kit and make sure that your butcher paper is down on the surface apron if you have an apron, or any clothes you're not too nervous about getting on. Most of you know this is acrylic paint we're working with today. So it's water-based, meaning that if you get it on your clothes and it's still wet, you can get it out with soap and water, but once it dries, it's kind of on there. So just, maybe roll up long sleeves if you're like me and are wearing long sleeves. But yeah, definitely don't wear your new sweater. Also, for your kits, we have some options of the paints we'll be using today and the brushes. So if you have the standard kit, you will have kind of our regular paint mixer paints. And if you have the new deluxe kit, you will have a whole assortment of colors that look like this. So I'll be going through which colors to use for kits. So it doesn't matter which one you have, we can create beautiful paintings with both. Also, make sure you have a cup of water, whether you have one of our vintage paint mixer cups like this, very nicely seasoned with paint, or just any cup you have laying around the house. But this will be awesome for cleaning off your brushes after you've dipped them in the water. And for brushes, just a quick look. So some of you may have these new blue brushes for our deluxe kits. You might even have a full brand new kit, lucky you, of these brushes. And if you're like me, you have our vintage paint mixer brushes look like so. So I'll be using these, but I'll just be referring to them as the mama, which is the larger of the two, and the baby, the little one. So those are the ones I'll be referring to throughout the class. All right, so also you guys are most likely using a smaller canvas, an 8x10. I will be using a larger one just so you can better see what I'm doing. But again, any size canvas you have at home, doesn't even have to be a canvas. It can be, anything you have laying around if you're just joining without the kit. So, also super important, now is a good time to put on some tunes that you want to listen to throughout the class. Rock out. It's fun to have a playlist. I won't have music going just so you guys can rock out throughout the class. Also, if you have any questions along the way, make sure you enter them in the live chat and I'll do my best to answer them as we go. All right, so just almost done with the intro, but let's just kind of talk about how this works. So I'll be taking you step by step through the Desert Twilight painting, but you are the artist. So if you decide you want your cactus to be, you don't have to exactly do what I do. That's kind of the fun part of this process. So just whatever feels good, go for it. All right, are you guys ready to paint? I think you are. Okay, so go ahead and find your mama brush. So that is the larger of your two. And we're gonna start nice and easy with the background. So for those of you who are using, looks like this. It's not your typical artist palette, but this works great. So on the shiny side, on the white side, we're gonna start to squirt our paints. Now this is important that you don't over squirt your paint because we don't need a lot in the beginning. So I am going to start. Then we're going to dab some of our lemon yellow. Now, if you have the standard kit, you're probably guessing that it's going to be red and yellow. So same deal with the, if you have these little paint pots, just put a little dab on your palette and that will work great. So we have crimson red, lemon yellow, and now vermilion. So vermilion is this really fun orange color. Up next, we have ultramarine blue. So if you have the standard kit, this is going to be phthalo blue, ultramarine phthalo. Same, but different. And this is a fun painting too because we'll be mixing a lot of colors, creating our own blends. Then we are going to do yellow ochre. So it's kind of this golden color. So if you have the standard kit, I'll show you in a bit how to mix this color, but don't worry about that yet. All right, and the last two colors, white and black, super simple. All right, now check this out. I want you to see my palette before I get started. So really a small amount of paint to start. And if you're going along and you run out of a color, before I do, just go ahead and squirt a little more on there. That works awesome. Okay, so I have my paint all ready to go. Mama brush in hand. Now remember that these are your own brushes now, so you have to take really good care of them. So whenever we're not using them, they're always going to be hanging out in the water cup like so. And water is really helpful for this first step. So I have my brush a little damp, and I am going to start grabbing some yellow and a little white. Now we're going to be building our sunset. So if you think about your sunsets, it's usually lightest and brightest where the sun is, right? So I'm starting about, let's say 5-6 inches from the bottom here, and just going side to side with my lightest and brightest being yellow. And also, please don't hesitate to ask questions if you have any. I can see all your questions there on the comment bar, so I'm happy to answer them as we go along. Now, as you're kind of filling in, you may notice that water is really helpful to spread your paint. So don't be afraid to dip your brush in the water as you go. It helps to get into the grooves of the canvas, and helps spread the paint a little further. All right, now while this is still wet, I'm going to introduce a new color, that vermilion. So this is that orange color. Now, while my colors are still wet, see how they kind of blend together really nicely? So just going big horizontal strokes. Now, pop quiz, how do you make orange if you don't already have orange paint? I'm sure you know. It's just red and yellow. So if you have the standard kit, go ahead and mix some red and yellow to make a nice orange. And then just keep blending, big side to side stroke all the way across. Now, another pro tip as you're going along is to continue this paint onto your side edges. If you paint with the paint mixer regularly, you already know this, but it just gives it a nice finished look, especially when you hang this on your wall. You don't really need a frame. So as you're going along on the front, don't forget to cover your sides. All right, so the next color we'll be introducing is going to be our crimson red. So just kind of rinsing my brush out a little bit, getting it still some water on there, picking up some red. So right now we kind of have a rainbow effect going, but just with sunset warm colors. Now, if you want this to be a little more pink, or if you want your sunset to be a little more pastel, all you have to do is add a tiny bit of white on there, and you'll start to get some nice pinks in there. All right, so we have a nice transition from yellow to orange to red, a couple pinks in there. Now we get to mix up a purple. So purple is super simple. It's going to be red and blue. So whether you have phthalo blue or ultramarine blue, I want you to mix that blue with a little bit of red. So here you can see my little mixing right there. Whoop, a little drippy. I use a lot of water when I paint because I typically paint with watercolors. All right, so I have a nice purple going on. And here's where I can really have fun blending this deeper color into my red. And the cool thing about this is mine is going to be different than the example painting right here. and yours is gonna be different than mine. And that's what makes this really fun, is every time you paint, it's gonna be a little unique. Just like we are all different, your painting is going to be different. And that's a good thing. They're all the same, it'd be really boring, be pretty lame. So same deal with the purple. If you want it to be creamy, a little more kind of an Eastery lilac purple, just add a little white in there. And you see how it makes it a little more creamy, kind of like a blueberry smoothie. And don't forget your sides as you're going along. Now, acrylic paint is really fun because it dries super fast. So that way you can layer on top and you can make a painting pretty quickly. But once that paint dries, it has a hard time blending with other colors. So that's why I'm kind of busting through this sunset gradient, because once this purple dries, I'll have a hard time blending it with any other color. And if you like one of these colors more than the other, say you're super into purple, you can take it purple all the way to the top. But I think I want to do one more sunset color, and that's blue. So you could go ahead and pick up your blue, whether it's the ultramarine or the phthalo, and take it all the way to the top. Now I just want to show you something. So here's my sunset so far, and here's my example. So you see how different they are? I think I'm in kind of a bright, cheery mood. This one is kind of deep and dark and mysterious. If you like this darker palette, all you have to do is add a little tiny bit of black to your blue and purple towards the top of the sky. So just be really careful to not do too much black, or else it'll kind of mask your purple and blue, but that's an option. Good to have options. I hope you guys will share some of these on Instagram later. We would love to see your creations. So I'm almost out of blue, so I'm gonna reload my palette with some blue. I like doing a little bit at a time too, because that way my paint doesn't get muddy. So sometimes when you're painting, you may scoop a little this, scoop a little that, and all of a sudden your white is like 10 different colors. So by doing a little at a time, you can keep your colors really pure. Awesome. So see how pretty that ultramarine is? I have the luxury of being able to plot between our regular palette, our standard palette, and our deluxe palette. So I have like 3 different blues. So if you're working with phthalo blue, it's gonna look more like this. Don't forget to keep your brush a little wet as you're going along. Almost there. This is a pretty intense first step. It's like a lot of blending for the first step of a painting, but you guys are crushing it. And before I forget, I'm gonna do this top edge right here. Perfect. All right, smooth gradient. And you know, you guys, you do not really have a time limit. If you want, you can kind of play with the sky as long as you like, but just keep in mind that the colors blend really nice when they are wet. Once they dry, you're gonna get stripes. So if anyone's experiencing that, where they have like a stripe of yellow, stripe of orange, stripe of red, all you have to do is wet your brush a little bit and kind of blend between, and those colors will be a little more friendly with each other. All right, so I'm happy with my kind of pastel sunset right now. So I'm gonna let this dry a little bit. Now, while I let this dry, I'm gonna talk a little bit about mountains. And even before then, drying. So sitting and watching paint dry is kind of boring. And if you've ever come to the paint mixer, you know all about our super secret drying method, and that's simply shaking your canvas. So if you're at home, just be careful where you shake in, that you don't kind of whack any chandeliers or anything that would cause a mess. But that's a really fun way to dry your painting instead of just sitting and watching it. So maybe put on a good song, a good shaking song, and while you're shaking and drying your sunset portion, I'm just going to talk a little bit about mountains, which will be our next step. So using this little extra palette, I'm going to just do a couple mountain examples. So we're based here in Utah, so we get to look at mountains all the time. So it's pretty lucky of us, because then we have some good inspiration. But just keep in mind that mountains are usually not perfect triangles like this. This kind of looks like scary teeth, so we don't want to do that. We want to be a little more refined, a little more close to nature. So for our mountains, we want them to be a little varied. So maybe you can practice on your butcher paper, the paper that's not on the table, and get some good mountain practice before you take it to your canvas. But I always try to make them a little wonky, a little, different height, different shape. And the cool thing with mountains is to create depth, all you have to do is put a little line in front. So you see how that line all of a sudden made 2 layers of mountains. So now if I want to make a 3rd layer, I can do that. So pretty cool. So one thing you want to avoid is crisscross lines, because that's a little confusing. Not really sure what's in front or behind, but that's really easy to cover up later, just by filling in over top. So a little bit about the shapes of mountains. Let's talk about the color of mountains. So on your palette, now is a good time to maybe reload your blue and red. So if you have your little tubes, go ahead and give yourself some more ultramarine. You can even play with your cobalt blue, this little closer to sky blue. And if you have a little paint pot, reload your phthalo blue. And more red. I'm also out of red. So we're going to be making some distant purpley mountains. So making sure we have all we need for that. And even some more whites. This is a good time to reload your white. All right, so finding your mama brush again, giving her a nice bath. So you can always check to see if your brush is clean by dabbing it on your napkin. So mine's pretty clean, nothing left on there, so I'm good to start mixing a new color. So I'm gonna make a purple, but this purple is going to be a little dusty. So I'm starting with some white, a tiny bit of black. See how a tiny bit goes a long way? And then I'm going to make purple. So I have my blue and a little red. And the cool thing about mixing paint is it's not an exact science. It's not like you're baking and you have to have a very specific measurement. You kind of just mix until you like it. So I want mine to be a little creamier and a little more purpley. So I have this nice dusty purple, kind of like a plum. And this is going to be the base for my mountains. So again, if you have any questions, don't forget to send it in the comment. You guys must be like crushing it. Okay, so coming back to the canvas, I've practiced my mountains on the butcher paper, so I feel really confident in taking it to the canvas now. I'm just gonna start by doing my ridge line. That's the top of the mountains with my mama brush. Now, if you're a little nervous, if the mama brush feels a little too big and a little too scary, try the baby brush to sketch them. Just do whatever feels good. So coming on here and creating some peaks. Maybe a big one there. And it's okay if it overlaps your color. We want to make sure that it overlaps our color so that we don't have weird white space popping up there. So now I have my peaks. I like their shape. And we're just going to start filling them in with our dusty purple color. And your purple doesn't have to all be, one homogeneous type of purple. You can maybe play with parts that are a little redder or a little more blue. There's no right or wrong purple. But just by adding that little bit of gray in there, see how it makes it seem further away? The color is a little more muted. And the more you paint, the more you're going to notice these things whenever you're just out in the world. Like when you're looking out on layers of mountains, the ones that are further away have less color. They look a little more gray, a little more muted. So that's what we're doing here. I was making some nice, distant, dusty colors. I hope you guys can get out to the desert soon. I hope that soon everything will be open and we can go explore these places we love. But for now, it's fun to paint them. That's a fun thing too. If you have like a spot you really love, like I know some of you are out there in Arizona, maybe you have a really pretty view in your backyard, you can always paint those mountains. Or if you're here in Utah, it could be like something in the Wasatch that you really love. Good stuff. All right, pretty easy. I'm not putting any detail on there, just kind of blocking in the shapes for now. And now I have all this white space below. It's kind of our last big thing we're gonna cover. And we're gonna do that same purple, but add a little more black. So I'm going to set this down for now and just start mixing. So same deal. So we're gonna do kind of a similar mix before, but a little more black. Grabbing my blue and some red. So purple and black. So I made mine really dark. I think I need to lighten it up a bit. Awesome. And sometimes when it's on your palette, it's hard to tell what it's going to look like on your canvas. So sometimes it's fun to maybe just on the sides do a little test strip and kind of just test the color. When it spreads out, you can see the color a little better. All right, so now starting at the base of my mountains, it's going to take this deep purple color all the way down. And this is a good time to utilize water, your friend. So it's going to really help the paint spread. And it's kind of fun to make some little mini mountains, some little hills at the base of your big guys. So just by changing up your brush stroke, by adding a little wiggle in there, see how we're creating little foothills? Cool. So just taking this all the way down to the bottom. And don't be afraid to experiment. So maybe just taking some pure blue in there. What happens if I put a little white in there? Ooh, kind of creates another hill. So anytime you mix a slightly different color, it's going to be a little more visible, your brush stroke. Make sure to cover your sides, something I need to do too. And if you get this paint on your fingers, that's totally fine. It will luckily come out when you wash your hands, which I know we're doing a lot of, so that's good. And also, as you're going along, don't be afraid to use a lot of paint. If you feel like you're like, man, I'm really being kind of choosy with my paint. You can always get more paint. So don't be afraid to load your brush up. Awesome. I'm loving how my sky looks really bright against this kind of dull purple color. It's cool the way that colors change depending on what color they're next to. All right, if you guys have any questions at all, doesn't even have to be painting related, let me know. Getting down to the bottom. Now the bottom is kind of tricky to paint. So if you're using an easel, you can flip it upside down, the whole thing in your easel, or you can kind of hold on to the back corner and grab that bottom edge. Hope you guys have been doing a lot of creative projects, maybe not just painting. I know a lot of my friends and myself have been cooking a lot, had pancakes for breakfast. I know a lot of people are getting into baking bread. My boyfriend keeps saying he's gonna bake me some bread, but I still haven't seen a loaf, so. Good stuff. So take a quick look here. So at this point, my canvas is totally covered in color. And just want to point out, see how down here in the bottom, there's a little bit of variety in color. So don't be afraid to kind of play with adding some lighter blues and purples just to create some depth and texture onto this dark bottom. I think it goes a long way. And at this point, we have to let it dry again. So remember, you can always give it a shake. You can always use a hair dryer, but that's kind of loud. I don't recommend a hair dryer. This is more fun. So while we're drying, set that there. I'm going to talk a little bit about cacti. So I know there are a lot of different cacti out there, but I'm going to stick with kind of the basic, simplest shape that I think looks really good. And that's this kind of Seguro looking guy. And all we have to do is either with your baby or mama brush. So I'll show you two examples. We'll do one with the baby brush and one with the mama brush. You can decide which one you want to do. And this is a great time to practice on the butcher paper too. If you're feeling a little nervous, sometimes you get really attached to the painting we've made and you're like, oh, I have to go on top of it with a cactus. So no pressure. If you don't want to put a cactus on there, don't have to. But I'll show you here the shape first. So every cactus is going to start with a line. So if you can make a letter I, you can make a cactus. Awesome. So this is with the mama brush. So just starting with a nice vertical line. And then from here, I'm going to make little arms. It's almost like the letter U. So you can start with making a U at the base of the cactus. And go out. And then we'll do one more arm over here. Cute. So that's with the mama brush. If you want to use the baby brush, this can help you be a little more exact. And if you want to do a little tiny cactus, this is how you do it. So again, starting with my kind of vertical shape. And little arms coming out on either side. So this way is kind of like you're outlining and then you'll fill it in. So you can always have a couple cacti that are just like a little finger. They don't have to have arms. You can even Google different cacti. It's kind of fun to go from the real thing. But we keep it super simple. So now I'm going to mix up an even darker color. So I kind of have on my palette that one I was just using. Remember that really dark color we filled the ground with? I'm going to add a little more black. I try not to use pure black too often because just by adding a little extra color in there, it's a lot richer. Instead of just a flat color, it almost is like velvety just by adding in some blue and some red with your black. All right, so before you take it to the canvas, maybe take a deep breath. If you're nervous, keep practicing on the butcher paper, but be brave. It's just a cactus. And the cool thing is, if you mess up, like maybe something like that happens, you're like, oh, you're freaking out. All you have to do is let it dry, and then we'll go over that with some sunset colors. So I did an intentional mistake just so I can show you how to fix it later. So no worries there. But coming on to my canvas, my cactus is gonna be pretty tall. I'm gonna start with one big one and then do a couple smaller ones. So with my mama brush, but you're welcome to use your baby if you're feeling a little nervous, I'm going to start with that big line. And I feel like these cactuses are kind of rounded, so make sure you have a nice rounded top. Make them a little wider. Awesome. I wish I could see your guys's. Wish I could see your paintings. I hope you share them when we're done. All right, so now I can make my cute little arms on one side, just like the letter U. And on the other side. And the cool thing about nature is that rarely are things perfect and rarely are things identical. So if your cactus is a little funky, if he kind of looks a little silly, that's probably closer to nature than if it was a perfect printout cactus. So go easy on yourself and your cactus. It's kind of more fun if they're a little wonky, I think. All right, got one. Let's give him a friend. I'm gonna do another one about over here. So again, just starting with that vertical line. Awesome. Taking it all the way down to the ground. Make sure you don't have any floating cacti. Make sure they're nice and rooted on the ground. And another thing you can kind of test here too is your cactus a different color than your ground? You'll be able to notice right away if your cactus is the same color as the ground because you might be able to see it. So if that happens to you, all you have to do is add a little more black and it will stand out a little bit more. You'll up the contrast. Awesome. And just for fun, and because I love them, I'm gonna add some prickly pears. And they're also really easy. So prickly pear is kind of just little round shapes. And this is the same color I'll be using. So this is totally optional, just to show you that you guys you can kind of go a little rogue if you'd like. So over here, I'm just gonna make some little circles. Kind of more like oval shapes or egg shapes. And they overlap a little bit. And I'm gonna take them all the way to the ground. And usually they have a couple little guys there on the top. This is where the flowers come out in the spring. Love it, cute. Okay, so I'll show you how to do that on the, it's a great skill to make many cacti. So check it out, with the mama brush, just making little kind of circle-y shapes, little as many as you like. And if you're if you're working smaller, you can use the baby brush. So this is awesome whenever you're coming in those little guys on the top. Super cute. And that is more of a prickly pear shape. So let me know if you have any questions on how to make something else. Maybe you're really into agave or a Joshua tree or something. Love to show you guys those too. Side of the room and look at it, because you may notice something you don't notice up close. So what I noticed is that my cactus is a little, and don't be afraid to add some black in there too. Really masks the color. Now it's dry now. My little whoopsie is dry. So all I'm going to do is go over it with the color underneath. So it's kind of like my magic eraser, but it's just paint. So come in with a nice clean brush. Make sure your brush is clean. That's very important. And I'm going to mix up some white. This is another secret ingredient for erasing that dark black color. So I'm going to do some white first. Kind of let that dry a tiny bit. Now the reason why I did that is because whatever I put on top of the white will be a really pure color. So now I'm going to start to mix up this purple that I made earlier. So that is just red and a little bit of ultramarine. And it's kind of hard to match colors perfectly. So just know that it may not be perfect, but it'll be a lot better than before. All right, so I've mixed up a nice lavender color. And I'm just starting to go side to side, similar brush strokes than the first time I painted it. And the cool thing about sunsets too is, they have clouds and they're all unique. So this could just be like a cloud, right? So I got my first layer here. I might let this dry a little bit because, as you know, if paint is just wet and keep going side to side, you're just gonna wipe the paint off. So I have to let this dry a little bit and then I'll really color match it in a second. But this is just, how we fix our mistakes. And, I paint a lot, and a lot of painting is just figuring out how to mix colors and cover your mistakes. So all artists do that. All right, so right now we're kind of in the home stretch. We have all the elements of our piece, and now we get to kind of have fun. Questions if you have any, but I'll start with the stars, just because I want my cactus to dry a little bit before we add highlights to them. So stars are really simple, and it is the side of the brush that we haven't used yet. So stars are going to be with the wooden side of your brush. So if you've ever had Dippin' Dots, the ice cream, we're going to be doing the same thing, dipping and dotting. So in white paint, I'm going to dip my the tail of my brush, and then check this out. Just little dots, super repeatable, perfect little stars. So I'm going to take it to the canvas now. Up in the top portion of our sky, kind of where it's blue and purple, is a great place to start adding dots. So as many as you like. And you kind of have to reload the back of your brush pretty often because it doesn't hold a lot of paint. And you're welcome to add constellations if you know any. You could even put a moon if that makes you happy. I feel like there are the best stars in the desert. Some of the best skies I've ever seen have been out in the middle of nowhere in the Utah desert. Just so bright. I saw a shooting star last night too. All right, now remember stars They're pretty random, so as best as you can, try not to make them perfect polka dots. Like you can put little clusters, just making sure that it looks a little random, makes it look more natural. And maybe a couple in the purple too. Awesome. All right, I think that's about enough stars for now. Kind of subtle, but I like it. Now, if your background is darker than mine, your stars are really gonna pop. Alrighty, so I'm just gonna talk a little bit about mixing a gold color because for those of you who have the deluxe kit, your yellow ochre is the gold, so it's already pre-mixed, pretty easy. But if you have the standard kit, we have to make our own gold. So we're gonna start with a little bit of yellow and an even tinier bit of red. So that makes orange, right? So I got this kind of light orange, and then I'm just gonna add some white to that. So now I have a nice kind of creamy gold color. And if you want this to be more red, you're welcome to add a little more red. Again, you are the artist. You know what color will look best on your piece. And that's the fun thing too. I mean, probably now you're getting kind of an idea of how to mix the colors you like. Sometimes it's just fun to mix colors, not even paint anything. So if you have the standard kit, kind of mixing this awesome on our painting. So with the baby brush, helps to have some water on your baby brush. Sometimes the paint gets a little dry when it's sitting out for a while. So I'm kind of mixing in some water in there just so it spreads a little easier. All right, starting out with my mountains, I'm gonna start adding some highlights. So these are really kind of simple little wispy shapes. Just kind of following the contours of my mountains. And notice I don't have a lot of paint on my brush. So if you are, noticing your color is really bold, maybe just take your brush and dab it on your napkin or your palette so there's not much paint on there. So just kind of coming in, being careful you don't go over top of your cacti. Just adding little highlights. And now I'm going to continue this onto my ground. So just kind of following the lines. And these don't have to be really continuous lines. They're just wispy. Just adding a little bit of glow to this kind of dark area that doesn't have much going on. And again, start easy, start light. You can always add more later. But I might start taking this to my cactus now, just so I can kind of work the painting all at once. So that's a term that artists use so you don't really get an intensely perfect object and then forget about the rest of your painting. So I'm going to take that same golden color I mixed up and just kind of start following the shapes of my cactus. And if you look at cactus up close, some of them have a lot of vertical lines. So for these tall guys, I'm adding some kind of vertical lines and just some little sweepy lines on the edges. Now, if you're going along and you're like, oh my gosh, I added way too much, all you have to do is grab that dark purpley color we did before, mixing it up right now, and then kind of mellow it out. So it's kind of like a give and take. You give a little bit of lightness and you take a little bit away. So check that out. I just mellowed out those lines that I wasn't too excited about. So as you're going along, always feel free to kind of dance between colors and brushes. All right, continuing with my highlights, taking it over to my little prickly pear. And wherever you kind of put the highlight is what will be on top, right? So make sure, kind of decide what little circles are going to be on top and just follow those lines. Nice work. And again, if there's any questions out there, please don't hesitate to ask. I bet you are not the only one who has a question. That's usually how questions go. Someone asks it and then everyone is like, oh, I was wondering that too. Sometimes I feel like these little prickly pears look like little aliens, googly eyes. Nice, nice. So you can even, with your baby brush, if you're like feeling it, you can add little, little flowers if you like, or little spikies. That's kind of fun. Whatever feels good, do that. And then taking it to my last little cacti, just highlighting really lightly. Again, a little bit goes a long way. Water helps too. Oh, I just learned something. So if you have questions and want to join the chat, you have to log into a YouTube channel. So you have to make your own account. So if you haven't done that, okay, so if you haven't done that and have a question, just do that real quick. It'll kind of pause the video and then it will take you back to right where we were. You won't miss a thing. So if you have a burning question and you're like, well, I'm trying to ask it, that's why. So you just need to create a YouTube account and log into that. But pretty easy breezy so far. Just adding some nice highlights. This is another good time to step back from your piece. So step back from it. See how the highlights look at a distance, because they're gonna look, they're gonna make a little more sense when you stand back from your painting than when you're right up close. So definitely take a step back. When I take a step back, I notice a couple things. One, I really like my highlights. I think they're popping from the background, but I'm also noticed that my one cactus looks a little funny. This guy, he looks a little silly. So I'm gonna give him an arm. I think he just needs an arm. That's what he needs. All right, and that's the cool thing about this paint too, is you can always add on after you notice something. So even tomorrow, if this is hung on your wall and you look at it, you go, oh my gosh, and notice something, you can always come back and tinker with it. All right, so while this arm on my cactus dries, I'm going to come back to my little, remember this little guy? You're like, oh yeah, we've been looking at it, that one little whoopsies there. So now I have one layer covering up my whoopsies. And if you have a little spot that you want to cover up, maybe it's a whole cactus. You're like, oh my gosh, I need to cover this. Did our first layer in the white, let it dry, and then started to mix up that purple, let it dry. So this is really coat number 3. And just mixing up that purple again. Awesome. And check it out. It's like starting to really disappear. Just a little side to side. And you can even pick up some of this creamy pink color too, just so it blends even better. And just like that, you would never notice there was a black mark there in my sky. Pretty cool, huh? So just know that no matter what happens with your painting, you can always edit it. You can always add to it. And a mistake is just a happy accident. So don't stress about it too much if you have a little spot that you're not excited about. All right, almost done. Can't believe it. Really fast. I'm just going to keep adding a little more highlighting to my cactus, especially that new arm I just put on there. There we go. Now it's matching the rest. Awesome. Now, as I step back, I also noticed I wanted to give my prickly pear a little more love. Just maybe some spikes. That's a fun thing to add to cactus, is little spikes. And that's just kind of flicking my baby brush upward and outward. I'm really excited to see some of these when you guys are all done. All right. So adding my last little touches to my cactus. And I think I've done it. I'm really stoked. So let's look at the original example versus mine. So different, but both awesome. So just keep in mind that yours are going to be different, but beautiful in their own regard. So the final step of any painting is to sign it, to take credit. So with the baby brush, all you've got to do is load it up with your favorite color, usually something that's going to stand out from that dark background. So maybe like a light pink or a light yellow. Adding some white to that color really helps. And then initials are a great, easy alternative to your full name. But maybe this is a gift. Maybe you're sending this to someone. In that case, you can always write a message on the back, and it won't shine through to the front. So fun things to keep in mind. If you guys have any questions about this painting or any other painting we do, don't be afraid to leave them in the comment section. This video will be available after we go live, so you can always come back and revisit this piece. You can do it again. Maybe you can do it with your friends later, with any canvas you have laying around. Don't forget to share your painting on Instagram. Our Instagram, it's backwards. It's at @the_paint_mixer. And we would love to see what you've created. We'll definitely share on our Instagram your creations. But we just really appreciate you guys being there and being creative with us. Even though we're at home, it's really fun to kind of express yourselves and try something new. So be looking for other classes we'll be offering. I believe the next one is next Saturday at this same time, and that will be the Flower Fox. Flower Fox, I think. I don't want to search on my computer while this is up. I might throw it off. But we are offering different creativity kits. Some are postcards if you want to send to loved ones, kind of a coloring postcard kit, or our painting kits are awesome too. Awesome. It is Flower Fox next Saturday. But if you have any ideas, like maybe you want to do a Zoom call with your entire family and do your favorite painting all together, we can do that too. So the possibilities are endless, and anything you guys can dream up, we can help you facilitate. So thank you so much for painting with us, and don't forget to share your work on Instagram at @the_paintmixer, and have a great day. Thanks for joining. Woohoo!